Howdy my totally as always Tubular gamers, and we're back with, you guessed it, another ranking video, and today we're talking about a platformer. Today we're actually going to be talking about KAO The Kangaroo. I know this video is probably a bit unexpected, but I really wanted to set some time aside today to talk about KAO. So if you don't know about KAO The Kangaroo, it's a series of 3D platformers developed and published by Polish studio Tate Multimedia. And all of these games star the titular character KAO, a young Australian kangaroo fitted with a boxing outfit. Now KAO was one of those platform mascots that was really big in the 90s and early 2000s. KAO got his start in 2000 on the Dreamcast and computer. There'd be a Game Boy Advance version as well. Then in 2003 we would get KAO Round 2 released for all the platforms at the time. And then in 2005 we would get KAO The Kangaroo Mystery of the Volcano. This game was only released for the computer in Poland, though it was never even brought over to the States until very recently. And really that was it. It was pretty fair to assume that KAO would be just another forgotten, cherished platformer mascot like Blinks or Gex or one of those where, you know, people, they fondly remember some of the games and hope that maybe they get a re-release at some point. People didn't absolutely love these games. These aren't masterpieces. These aren't some of the best 3D platformers in the genre, but they were fun, creative, cute little games that clearly had a lot of passion put into them, and they were solid 3D platformers. They were really great B or AA platformers that we just don't get nowadays. Until Tate really dropped a bomb on us and announced that KAO The Kangaroo was actually coming back. Not only were all of his games getting re-released on Steam, we were getting a brand new KAO The Kangaroo. And I finally played it since it was free on Epic, and so I'm here to rank all of the KAO games. We're going to be looking at them all worst to best. We're going to be comparing them, give them all little reviews. You know how it goes. How have these games aged? How fun are they? Are they still engaging? They got good level design. We're going to be looking at everything here. So like, share, comment, sub. Please sub. All that good stuff. Let's just get right into it. KAO The Kangaroo, the 3D platformer series, is back. What do I think is the weakest of these games? Well, I think it's KAO The Kangaroo on Game Boy Advance, developed by Titus of Superman 64 fame, or shall I say infamy. And you know, I'd say this game is on par with the quality you'd expect from Titus. As in, there's no quality. It's not good. This game is not good at all. So the game has the same story basically as the home console version, with KAO going up against the hunter and, you know, being a boxing kangaroo and all that. I mean, that's well and fine. It's actually where the gameplay is concerned that the quality just kind of goes out the window to become a very shallow, bad 2D platformer. The game is pretty much everything going wrong for it. It has awful controls, horrible collision, bad level design, annoying enemies, just atrocious bosses, and I mean, you have a recipe for just a bad game, and there's really not a lot more to say other than that. The presentation is pretty questionable. The controls are just incredibly unresponsive, slippery, just poorly designed, like you hold up to run. The level design is really asinine and just doesn't make a ton of sense, and has really poor enemy placement, and the enemies just knock you back like crazy, and you'll end up just getting stuck on the environment. You'll fall through the environment just like Superman 64, and the general collision is just poorly done, and the actual times where you're not just getting bounced around by the enemies, like say when you're in a vehicle, it's not any better. It's just really poorly done here also, and you'll just end up falling through the ground or just dying over and over and over because of just how shoddy the design. Like, wow, this is just really poorly designed 2D levels. Like, it is surprisingly awful. Like, you would think by this point they would have figured out at least some basics for 2D platformers when it comes to level design, but no, they didn't. And the boss fights, they're a joke, and the game's over, and that's it. I would rather not play this game. I don't think anybody should ever play this game, and it's, you know, it's not a blemish on KAO, it's just a shitty little Game Boy Advance version, but don't even bother. And so here we have KAO The Kangaroo Mystery of the Volcano, releasing only for the PC all the way back in 2005 in Poland, but it didn't get a Western release until actually pretty recently. Now, this is a very strange game. It's strange in the sense that it wasn't released out of certain territories. That's already kind of odd, but the game itself is really strange too. It's clear that it's like the prologue or maybe the first chapter to a much larger game that never ended up happening. And so what we have here is a very short, relatively shallow experience that's maybe like 2 or 3 hours long. The story's about KAO again, but this time he's not fighting the hunter, and he's got actually a pretty cute little outfit, but it's about him ending up on this island and having to rescue his friend from a nearby volcano. And to do so, he's got to collect the 4 artifacts and defeat the god of the volcano. I mean, the story's pretty simple. It's fine for what it is, but yeah, it just kind of feels unfinished and left hanging, and we've never gotten anything close to some kind of conclusion or continuation, so that's interesting. Interestingly enough, the game is also not dubbed. It is only subbed. There's only subtitles for English speakers. I think I've said enough things are interesting. Let's talk about something not so interesting, the gameplay. It plays very similar to KO Round 2 in a number of different aspects. For the most part, it's a pretty basic 3D platformer where you'll find yourself platforming through some very linear levels, taking out some enemies, destroying some crates and boxes, and the occasional vehicle level. The game is, like I said, very linear, point A to B. There's not a ton of level design here. There's nothing that you haven't really seen before in a platformer. The controls are fine. The jumping is fine. The combat is very basic and basically the same as KO2 with your basic punches, kicks, rolls, and you do actually get to throw dynamite, which is pretty helpful. There's these little collectibles, these like gem orb things. There's a couple hundred throughout this game. KO will go through various platforming challenges. You can actually glide with like this little parachute looking thing. And then, yeah, there's the vehicle levels. So when you're not platforming, which is fine enough, I will add, the vehicle levels pop up here and there. Well, they're not as good. The plane is super floaty, and I just never really got used to this plane, whether it was the controls or flying around or getting into the fights. Like, I was just like, yeah, no, this isn't clicking with me like at all. It's super clunky, and it's over before you know it. Same really goes for this boat level. Didn't really have any time to get used to it, and it's over before you know it, and then the game's over before you know it. Like, it's really, really short. Like, I see playthroughs where people are beating this game in under 2 hours even, and it's like, huh. That's really it. Most movies are like longer than this game, but you know, I mean, the experience itself was fine enough. I wouldn't say it was like spectacular or that the game was wowing me more than the other KO games, but it's like whatever. It's just a really forgettable short platformer that, you know, if you really love KO, I guess you can give a shot. Otherwise, yeah, you could totally skip this and you're missing nothing. And so here we have the original KO the Kangaroo releasing all the way back in 2001 on the Dreamcast. Now, I played this game many years ago, and you know, I gotta say, despite the game's shortcomings, I still thought it was a pretty cute, fun little platformer. So the game sees our titular character KO really just kind of chilling, having a good time, when all of a sudden this hunter shows up and just captures him and his family. It's then up to KO to stop the hunter, and that's pretty much the story. I mean, it's pretty straight to the point and basic and cute and friendly. KO himself is cute and friendly, got a good little design going on, and yeah, then you get into the game. The gameplay is actually quite similar to Crash Bandicoot in the sense that it's an incredibly linear 3D platformer where you really just kind of move down a straight line. Occasionally, you know, you can explore an area and veer off to the left or right, but for the most part, you really are just kind of going forward and just going through the challenges that the game throws at you. There's a bunch of levels in this game. There's a level select screen. You go through the levels, there's some vehicle levels, there's some boss fights, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, when it comes to what KO can do, he's obviously, if you can't tell, very slow. Like, this guy is not in a hurry, which is kind of funny because his family's on the line, but you know, it is what it is. There's even a power-up that actually speeds him up and makes him hop like a kangaroo. But KO can move at a sluggish pace, he can jump, he can punch, he can do a tail whip, and he can get some power-ups. Like, one of the power-ups allows him to shoot boxing gloves. You know, I wish I could do that. I would definitely do that to, like, parking garage screens or something. Anyway, so there's collectibles in the game, like these coins, which you can collect enough of to get another life. There's lives. You collect the checkpoints and place them down wherever you want, which is really strange, and, like, it took me halfway through the game to figure out you could actually just place checkpoints down wherever you want. But what the core gameplay loop really looks like is a lot of platforming and the occasional combat. The combat's really simple. Everything dies in one hit, really, including KO. And so you just kind of beat everything up like that. And then, yeah, you do a lot of jumping, a lot of platforming. The level design is decent enough. I'm not going to act like it's great. I'm not going to act like it's revolutionary or innovative or wowed me in any way. But it's fine for what it is. It gets the job done. It's serviceable. What isn't so serviceable is these vehicle levels, which are just kind of a joke, where you're like on a snowboard or a glider, and KO just kind of dies like instantly. You have to go super slow through these, otherwise you're going to just eat shit and die. And while we're on the topic of eating shit and dying, we have the bosses, which are a joke. They die like instantly. There's really no challenge here, and I just don't even know what they were going for with these. And the last thing to mention on eating shit is we have the graphics. You don't need Digital Foundry to come in here to tell you that this game came out in 2001 on the Dreamcast. It didn't exactly look very good. The PS2 was out. Shoot, I'd say some N64 games look better than this, but this was a very small budget game, so I'm going to give them a little credit. The music at least is pretty nice. I do like the music. Overall, KO, it's a fine enough little platformer. I'd say it's average, maybe like slightly above mediocre, but you know, it's a fun, cute little platformer, and not every platformer has to be Mario or Crash or Spyro. There can be, you know, some B-tier platformers. If you really like the genre and haven't tried the original KO the Kangaroo, I implore you to give it a shot. You know, you might be surprised, you might hate it, but it's super cheap anyway, and clearly it's budget and small and has a lot of heart, and so I'm gonna give it some cred there. If you're a 3D platformer nut or guru, you should probably check it out. And so here we have KO the Kangaroo Round 2, originally releasing in Poland in 2003, but it wouldn't make its way to the States until 2006. So when it comes to the story, it's very basic. It just sees KO going up against the hunter again. That's really it. There's some more characters here and they do talk to you, but the story's really basic. It's cute and it's fine for what it is. Now when it comes to the gameplay, it plays relatively similar to the first game. It's nowhere near as just straight, I guess. I mean, you know, a lot of the game is still incredibly linear and just straight, but there's a lot more areas you can actually explore to the left and the right. It doesn't feel like a straight Crash clone. It feels much more like, you know, a normal 3D platformer, and I gotta say, it controls and plays a lot better than the first game. KO moves a lot faster, he feels a lot nicer to control, and I think his abilities, again, they just feel nicer. He can double jump, he can throw these like boomerangs, and he can still do his punches and his tail whips, and I think all around his moveset, it's fine. The enemy encounters you get into, they're fine enough also. It actually feels incredibly similar to Rayman 2 when you're throwing the boomerangs and circle strafing. Yeah, this game actually has a lot of similarities to Rayman 2. Like, you start in the cage, you throw the boomerangs, and it's like in that third person perspective where you're strafing. I'm sure there are plenty of people who made plenty of lists of how this game is similar to Rayman 2. But when it comes to the general level design, it's obviously not going to be as good as Rayman 2. This is a B-grade platformer, and I think it's fine. It's not, you know, the most exciting and the most challenging, but it's got heart, and it keeps you engaged for its, you know, couple hours that it is. You collect coins, and you're just kind of going through these levels one at a time, and I don't know, I thought it was fun enough. I mean, it's fun to play a little B-grade platformer like this from time to time, which was when I played this game a couple years ago when they put it on Steam. There's some vehicle levels, and these are so much better than the first games, like way better. These are fine enough, they control all right, you don't die like instantly, and I actually did have some fun with these. I'd say the pacing of this game is quite good. They keep things varied. You're going to different environments pretty frequently, and while the game isn't the longest, it ends, you know, before it gets repetitive or annoying. Like, it's only a couple hours long. I think it took me like 3 or 4 hours to finish, which, I mean, is okay, I guess, for a cheap 3D platformer, but if you're expecting, you know, a long, fulfilling experience, you're not going to get it here. But if you're looking for just a fun, little, quick 3D platformer, I don't think you could go wrong with KO Round 2. It's also on PSP, titled KO The Challengers with, like, multiplayer, but I've never tried that version. I think KO 2, you know, it's really cheap. If you like 3D platformers, it's worth giving a shot. But here we have what I believe to be the best of the KO the Kangaroo series, KO the Kangaroo, releasing in 2022. This is the reboot of the entire series, and I gotta say, I was actually really impressed with this game, way more than I thought I would be. I was expecting another, you know, pretty typical average to slightly above average B-grade platformer, but what I got, this game's actually pretty good. The story's actually really different. It doesn't have the hunter or any of that crap. It sees this like mystical dark fart cloud basically taking KO's family, and so it's up to him to go rescue all of them. And first up, I'm gonna just say, the story actually is a bit more involved. You know, KO actually like really talks, and so do the other characters. There's actually a couple other characters, not just like 1 or 2 at most. And you know, the writing, the dialogue, it's fine for what it is. They try to make some jokes here and there. Some of them hit, most of them don't, but you know what, at least they're trying, and they keep things relatively lighthearted. I think the story is fine. I think the characters are fine, and nothing's gonna, you know, grab you and you can be like, wow, this is amazing. But it's like, you know, this is cute, this is fun, this is lighthearted. I can dig it. It's not every game needs to be super serious and dark and edgy or anything like that. When it comes to the visuals, I can say the exact same thing. It's fun, it's lighthearted, it's colorful. Like, for basically an indie game, I think this game looks great. Like, it has a really good art style, it looks really cute, all the environments are super colorful and detailed, and they're really varied also. Like, no 2 levels look the same. I actually really like how the hub worlds are in this game, not only design, but how they look also. Like, presentation wise, I think this game is great. The frame rate was great, textures, models, all of that was good. I did have some glitches here and there, but that's, I mean, it's modern gaming, so all that was good though. When it comes to the gameplay, it plays, not the furthest from those old KO games. It is still a 3D platformer at heart. It isn't the most complex one you'll find. It's not Mario or Sonic or Rayman or any of those, but what we got is a decent little platformer here with some solid mechanics. KO, he can jump, double jump. He still can do his tail whip. You can now do a roll. You can still punch enemies, and you actually do get some abilities throughout the game, like throwing boomerangs, throwing these fireball boomerangs, a grappling hook, and even more. I think that the game is throwing enough new abilities at you throughout these levels to keep things interesting. The moveset never feels boring, and the level design actually takes advantage of it. This game has the best level design of any of the KO games, not even close. It's actually decently well designed. I actually really enjoyed these levels. They put a lot of heart and soul into these levels. There's a good attention to detail. They always put these crabs next to these cliffs. I actually really did like the levels in this game. I'm not going to say, it's like Banjo good or Crash 3 good, but these are some of the better 3D platformer levels I've seen from really any 3D platformer that isn't Mario in the last couple years. There is combat in this game. It's a little more involved than the other games. You can actually just beat the crap out of these guys, and there's a super move, and I think it's fine for what it is. It's not going to rock your cock off, but it's alright. I didn't really see any issues with it. There's boss fights, which, this series is just never going to have good boss fights. KO 2 didn't, KO 1 didn't, KO 3, GB, none of them. This game, nope. Boss fights just still are not very good, but it's okay. It's not a blemish on the game. I think the game is still really well paced. It's got a decent length. This is the longest KO game at 5-6 hours, and if you want 100% it, you'll probably add another hour or two. There's a bunch of collectibles. You can get some costumes. If you don't like KO's new redesign, which I feel it's whatever to me, you can actually go back to the old one, which I did. I like the old one. That's my favorite, and I really like how you can just have a bunch of different costumes. There's other collectibles. There's some unlockables. The game actually keeps things interesting while you're going through it. There's variety. Yeah, KO The Kangaroo is actually one of the most solid indie 3D platformers I've played in the last couple years, and I have no problem saying if you like 3D platformers, out of any of the games on this list, check this one out. This game's actually pretty good. Not just it's alright, or if you like B-grade platformers, it's good. No, this is actually a pretty great game. Like I said, it's not Mario or Rayman or one of the big boys, but when it comes to indie platformers, I think this is a really good one, and I have no problem recommending it. It's probably going to be really cheap soon anyway. It was free on Epic, so if you didn't get it there, it's going to be really cheap soon. Runs well enough, and yeah, totally worth checking out. KO forever. Let's get another KO the Kangaroo. I'm just shocked he even came back all these years later. I really didn't see that one coming. In the meantime, we got a pretty awesome game here, so I've got no problem saying check it out, and I hope everyone has a great day. If you made it to this part of the video, comment bricks as in what you used to build a house. Thank you so much for watching. Like, share, sub. Bye-bye.